Hey everyone, and welcome to Ginger Prime. My name's Brian, and in today's video we're continuing our deep dive into Bellular's Final Fantasy XIV experience. You guys have requested this. Y'all have been sending me these videos, and so we decided to do one. The first one was up just recently posted as of recording this now. So we're continuing on. After we did the first video, there's two other videos. This is the second one, so if you're curious, I'm probably going to just break these up into three separate video reactions. This is kind of the longer one, so feel free to kind of bounce in and bounce out as necessary. If you're new to the channel and never seen any of the content before, note we don't do a lot of reaction style content here, but you're welcome to check out any of our other content, see if it's something that you're excited about and interested in. But I hope you subscribe. You can always unsubscribe later. We're picking up where Bellular has basically created a Suncat Mikote, and he is going to continue on big differences between WoW and Final Fantasy XIV. So let's just go ahead and get into it, and yeah, let's see what happens.
Like, actually reading the quest text is important. Now, the game provides, it shows quest text to you via conversations that you click through like it's a JRPG, like it's an RPG.
Because it is a JRPG, yeah.
It is a JRPG. And by the way, thank you, Dragon Spheres, for pointing out that this gentleman, who I did not know the name of last time, is named Matt. So Matt, I am so glad that he is in the co-pilot chair here for Bellular, so that way they can have that just full-on context of it as a discussion. All right, sorry, continue on.
Now, that is so much more effective than how WoW does it by default, which is just click an NPC, wall of text.
Yeah.
And if you want...
It does feel way more natural. It does feel way more natural in terms of 14's dialogue and having that conversation. This kind of carrying over from Final Fantasy XI. I like that 14 just pulls it into its own little box. So it is a JRPG. You are playing a RPG MMO. It's what I kind of refer to Final Fantasy XIV as personally.
Want to solve that problem within World of Warcraft?
So, as you were saying about the narrative
If they were to do that in World of Warcraft, I think it would be a ton of work. That's a foundational decision.
of Gridania, all the little things coming together into the bigger things.
Yes,
all
that
the
worked quite
experience
well.
of that. Yeah. So, here's the thing about that. That's Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
never stops that.
That's the thing.
It just also has massive moments as well.
It seems like it's, I'm playing like the worst bit, but it just kind of goes better and better and better and better.
Yeah, 100%.
It gets, oh man, it is. I don't know how to put this. I was relatively unsold on ARR when I finished it.
All right.
I was like, right, this is good, but it's not great. This is fine. This is perfectly.
This is fine. I think that's such a great review of ARR. I enjoyed it for its time. I loved it for its time. I played through it for its time. And so I think at the time it was definitely better than it's typically received from somebody coming from another MMO. So like, it is kind of a bummer that people have that view of ARR and that it has its weaknesses that it has. But that's like, those weaknesses are 7 years old, 6 years old. But, you know, like, there's a timing to that aspect that I completely understand. But anyway,
Perfectly okay. And then now I want to go back into the past and punch myself in the head for not keeping up with FF, because 5.3 is after finishing 5.3, which is, you know, that's when all of the expansion stuff ends. 5.4 and onwards is lead up to Endwalker. And then some other side stuff. It is my second favorite game of all time, without even thinking about the MMO part.
That's
in terms
pretty
of just
big.
the story it tells. The one game that beats it is Nier Automata overall.
Okay, so it's really good that from Matt's perspective that Nier is essentially what is the number one game of all time, and that 14 is coming in at number 2, which I think is really good praise. Honestly, really high praise.
Like it is, it is completely insane, and it's all based off that same foundation. It's all that same foundation of just, here's a couple people, they've got problems. Are you gonna help them? You go, fuck it, I'll give you a hand. Every time you show up somewhere new, it's never, oh, hello, venerated one, don't do any bullshit, here's the big problem.
Yeah.
It is just like, right, someone's there, and it's part of the main story quest. It's not just side quests where it's like, all right, go help this person with their like menial thing or their trivial like tasks and stuff.
Okay.
And it's a lot of it is like, people here aren't really trained for combat, you're really strong, go sort them out. So you fight stuff, and then someone's like, go pick some things while you're there. And it's just consistently being treated like an adventure is absolutely insane.
I've liked that so
It's
far,
complete-
actually.
So what's really interesting about that perspective, and it can easily become memed upon within MMOs, like the FedEx style quest of go fight this, go kill this. Over the course of Final Fantasy up to now Shadowbringers and soon to Endwalker, I think they've really got streamlined in terms of their questing. Yes, we've gone into unknown areas, but yeah, like, okay, it is pretty clear that you've done some pretty big things, and so it isn't really like, falling upon you, the Warrior of Light, to always go do these menial tasks. But as it was kind of starting out as to who this person is, you do feel like a kind of an errand runner for most people. But at the end of the day, like, isn't that a quest? Like, didn't I quest to Walmart just the other day to get groceries? I don't know.
Completely insane.
Yeah.
And they keep that the entire way, even as the character builds up a reputation as being, the hero of the story. It is still, like, I saw, this is a long time ago, or the post was from a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been from around Heavensward time. Maybe it was early Stormblood. But someone on Reddit posted saying, your main character is barely a character sometimes. You're basically you're a tool. You're like a gun in the back pocket of other characters, and you're just used to point and shoot things. Like, oh, we've got problem solved. Pull out the main character, and through that, especially when they start to add dialogue choices later on, that really feel meaningful and go back to previous things. They're not massive. They change the next line of dialogue, but nothing else essentially. Where somebody, you can make a funny, you could say a funny thing, and the character will respond going, you're such a bell end. Anyway, off we go. And it just works so perfectly because you're the one who's done all this immense stuff, as all these other characters are doing main character things. And it's,
Okay.
it is absolutely unbelievable overall. It is unbelievable, and it's purely from that thing of they started it there, of learn about these people, learn about this place, and just do that over and over again.
It's that thing where I get a humongous feeling that it's a slow build that is going to pay off.
It is,
which I mean, I know it pays off basically from everybody that I've.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like words can't express. Like, it pays off. It pays off. And it's unfortunate that people aren't able to stick with it. This isn't everybody, but there are people and they're like, I just couldn't do it. And I'm not going to sit here and judge them and say they did anything wrong. But at this point, like, that shouldn't really be a part of the narrative. It's like, guys, like, this is how the game is. ARR is going to challenge you. Depending on your gaming background, you might actually find joy in it. You should definitely try it. And that's why the free trial goes all the way through Heavensward, which gives you, not just the first taste, but really where the game comes into its own and really starts hammering some of these points home. And so I think that free trial is by far like a real critical aspect to the offering that is Final Fantasy.
That I've heard.
it really does.
The duties, which are kind of like scenarios
Yes.
that you're bumped into for like key plot moments, they've been good too, and you go into them really quite seamlessly. I know it'll be way better in the future, but what I've really noticed is like even the Realm Reborn cinematography, cutscene stuff, it is less jarring than World of Warcraft Shadowlands is.
It really is.
Way less jarring. And I think that just goes to show how much better those RPG elements are handled by Shadowbringers. And basically, the World of Warcraft stuff looks completely fucking incompetent in comparison. And I've seen...
Spoiler warning, some foul language. I guess I'll have to make sure I put that in the ratings board for this video.
Some in-game cutscenes that happen in Stormbringer that I think you showed me, or Stormblood, it was like a year ago. And those absolutely, it was like, they looked like actual video game cutscenes that you get in a video game with a campaign that you play, but it was there in this MMO. You compare it to the WoW ones where you've got Tyronda's mouth doing something, her voice is doing something completely different, and the animations looking all janky, and also a thing that makes the WoW ones look completely embarrassing. Their art style doesn't match the game they're making at all for World of Warcraft sometimes. Now, I don't mean the art style of the world. Of course, a part of art style is animation, how things are animated. So the acting of WoW's characters is completely incongruent with the narrative. You've got Laura Bailey giving this big performance, and then Jaina with these humongous eyes, this incredibly overexpressive face. And you look at that and you're like, wow, what is going on? This is a weird cartoon, but the voice acting doesn't actually match it. Nothing, it all feels bad and weird. Whenever Blizzard do, those in-game cutscenes they started doing in Legion, and they've never looked good. They look better now than they did in Legion, but actually it's weird. In Legion, Blizzard, it's like they knew they looked bad, so they use them sparingly and they play to their strengths. But now Blizzard will just flat out give you a close-up of a character's face and it'll look terrible. And it's also like cinematography.
I'm going to have to take his word for it, hands down on that. So just like, note, I have not experienced enough World of Warcraft to really feel like I can come in and be a commentator on the state of the game and its animations. But I definitely have a preference and a biasness that you guys should know. So I'm just going to take Michael at his word here.
Seemingly done by just a random game designer. Yep. And like, look, for an example, for our game development, a recent build that we reviewed. Very happy with it. Very, very happy with it overall. But some of the staging and, placement of characters and composition was clearly, it's stuff that, we know it wasn't done by the art director because it wasn't done by the art director, and it's a very early passive thing, so it's fine. But it's one of those things where it's like, that's important. It's important to get those things right. WoW completely fucks that up. And Final Fantasy XIV seemingly is doing a better job than WoW now in A Realm Reborn. I know it does a far better job based on the Stormblood stuff you've told me. And then from what I understand, by the time you hit Shadowbringers, they had massively upgraded a bunch of their camera tech and stuff to the point where it is truly incredible looking.
Yeah.
So that's rough for Blizzard. They have not made the investments to compete with Final Fantasy XIV narratively. And then I think also in Final Fantasy XIV, they are, I think, obviously way more willing to do things slowly and to earn their big moments. Whereas it feels like Blizzard loves their own lore and thinks that they deserve their big moments. That's basically it. It feels like Blizzard thinks they deserve their big moments, whereas Final Fantasy XIV thinks it needs to earn its big moments. That's
such an interesting way of phrasing it. I never thought about it that way. I only had to look at other games, but in terms of WoW, really can't speak to it. But in terms of Final Fantasy, those big moments are coming, and it is earned. It is. I absolutely agree, especially in the context of Final Fantasy XIV, that having that mindset that it's just okay. And sometimes small things occur, and I'll be interested to see what he gets to Stormblood, because like when I take that critique and apply it to Stormblood itself, I've often said that Stormblood didn't feel complete until just recently with Boja, and I'm really excited to see how that plays out in the long run. But at its core, it just kind of is like, okay, yeah, we're doing these things, we're moving to these things, and there's things that set itself up prior, and then they have a payoff later, and and certain dungeons, I'm not going to name them here, I think also do an example of that. So, if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about.
That's what I've got from people so far, and it's definitely meshed with my experience of the game thus far as well.
That's entirely it. An expansion will be, over 3 patches over like a year and a bit. They'll drop stuff at the start of an expansion, and then it'll pay off at the end.
Yeah.
But even better than that, there are so many callbacks, and
I just noticed that their names are popping up here in the bottom. So I didn't notice that at all during the first video. There we go. Anyway, Dragosphere has pointed it out. His name is Matt, and now I'm assuming that's actually happened this at some point, but prior to this video, I just hadn't even noticed it.
things that I remember happening in 2.0, characters that are important, events that are important, things that have happened. And sometimes they're a little bit kind of just call back to in a sense. But after finishing Shadowbringers, it's like, no, there are things that they have told you at the start of 2.0 that if you don't remember them, your experience will be worse. And not in the way at keep all this shit in your head, but in the case of this is a linear story that they have told. They've told it piecemeal because they've had to, because they can't tell it all in one go, but they've told it over, 2013, 2019? They've told it over 7 years. Mm-hmm. And it has been absolutely remarkable. Yeah. I think that specifically the recent main scenario quest writers are they are next level. They aren't just good writers for video games or good writers for an MMO. They are literally good writers. Especially with stuff in 5.3. There's a level to it.
I'm loving Matt.
Where I had to stop and I was like, fuck me.
I guess
That is unreasonable.
there's something we need to engage with here. Blizzard are good at making worlds and building lore.
Yeah.
I do not think Blizzard are good writers. And I've never understood why people think that Blizzard are this like renowned storytellers.
Yeah.
And I want to dive into that point a little bit more.
Okay.
I mean, you look at, say, StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
And how they... I mean, look, I kind of like the StarCraft 2 story for what it is, and, like, it's fun to go through, but it certainly does not live up to the promise of StarCraft 1 and what it established. You know, basically, StarCraft 2... I mean, you got is basically Jim and his relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, we kind of know there's very real life parallels with Metzen's life that he has admitted are actually what drove a bunch of that creative direction. Which, of course, I don't really like how it went down that way. But, you know, there's that. Like, Diablo 3. I mean, fucking hell, what awful storytelling that game has. What a silly disaster.
I don't remember a fraction of it. I played that game like crazy. Like.
Yeah. And then, you know, in World of Warcraft, I mean, Blizzard have made bizarre narrative decisions for ages.
Yeah.
You know, their world building, their lore stuff has been cool, but their actual storytelling in-game has always been shoddy. You look at Battle for Azeroth, where, I mean, they raced through their lore so fast and were so bad at really explaining things well. It's like the only good Blizzard storytelling happens in transmedia narrative, not in-game.
So what I have to say, this is feeling like it's building up off of what they've already kind of stated, where Blizzard feels it deserves it, and 14 feels that it has to earn it. And yeah, I'm just going to have to leave it at that.
So I guess for me, it's like super jarring to play an MMO and have good storytelling within the MMO and not just as a part of the transmedia narrative.
Yeah.
What's really good about him actually playing this is to see these things. Like every MMO, I think, maybe brings a certain amount of strength to the game, to the world, to the experience that the player has. And so them having this ability to bring this level of strength, to bring this level of content to the game and experience 14, I think hopefully will help them narrate. Like when you look at kind of a balanced diet, right, of like different games, like this does this really well, this does this really well, it'd be really cool. And that way you can frame it, because I think as a developer, developers do well off of examples, right? Like you're like, hey, I like how it worked in this. Would be interesting to see if 14 adopted that in some way and that would fit into the world, and vice versa, etc. Like competition, I think is really critical and is really good for games to have, because then essentially you can end up having hopefully better systems and a better product overall for the experience. It's hard to do that with the world and the lore and the storytelling, though, especially if you don't have that kind of at a root to the game and the experience.
So that's an issue, and I think there's a space where a lot of people, if they can find themselves able to go and play something Japanese that feels different and get into it, and actually have that suspension of disbelief, then I think it will be a lot more successful for not the lore side, but it'll be more successful for the storytelling side, I think.
Yeah, that is exactly what Nicky experienced going through, because obviously he's a big anti-weeb, and he's just like, now that he is happy to suspend his disbelief and has done it, he's like, no, this is absolutely insane. If you can.
So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is kind of getting into that kind of a prejudgment. Like, hey, a lot of people think this about the game, and they're worried about being a weeb or like whatever. And it's got like, you know, this, we've seen this happen with Asmongold, we've seen this happen with other content creators. You know, that being a leverage thing. But then when you kind of get into it, you're like, oh, it's not like either what I feared or what it is. Honestly, I always just kind of like different kinds of races. Like even going into other games, Guild Wars 2, for example, has a lot of really awesome races. And I kind of prefer that. I like the variety. I like the fantasy. And that just seems like a natural fit. But then again, I've been playing JRPGs my whole life.
If you can just let those preconceptions of what this is or what you think this might be go, it is absolutely, it's next level. It's next level. Yeah. And World of Warcraft, I don't know how they can solve it without completely rethinking everything they do in
WoW 2. Like WoW 2. I know Chris is vehemently against it in terms of that they've redefined their player experience, but I think New Genesis is going to show us that you can honor that's come before, especially after years and years and years, upgrade engine, upgrade combat, do all these things and not have to be subject to the decisions that were made 10, 15 years ago. And so you can have that experience, but you got to have it and build it at the core, and trying to build it into this bigger game is just, I think it's a lot of work, and I don't think they're getting the value out of it that they expect. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of frustration in the WoW community.
Onyxia or Sartharian, as in kind of one boss little raid you can go to, versus
Yeah, on a lot of the WoW stuff, just FYI, like you might want to check out Chris's reaction. We're going to talk about it today for a video, so just note that that video might be up or it might not be up, but just note that over at Work to Game, we're going to come together and talk about all this. But if you're wanting more insight into the WoW aspects of what they're saying, be sure to go check out Gaming Kinda.
is a current WoW world boss.
Whoa, don't even dare.
Like, is that our
Yes,
sort of
it is. It is
difference?
very much Onyxia. It is very much Onyxia. It is very much like the last boss of Crucible of Storms in isolation.
Gotcha.
It is a raid boss that's a little bit simple, that you queue up to, you go in, that's it. That's it. There's no like, but that stuff usually is an intro cutscene that will like the at the start everyone waits for you because they're forced to in trials. It's literally you can't pull the boss until people have either skipped the cutscene or watched it all. And then they usually end with an ending cutscene. And then you'll be teleported beside the entrance to the raid, or the trial, because you're supposed to, like, basically it brings you up to a point where it goes, here's the fight.
Yeah.
And then there's a thing you can click that will open the duty finder for you. You can do it from anywhere else. You can go do other things while you wait in queue. But then at the end of it teleports you back there. So it is this like seamless bit of, here's MMO boss fight in the middle of your single player JRPG. Because I saw someone in chat there say,
Cool.
I'm not going to scroll up to find it because it's long gone. But someone's saying it sounds like very much just a single player RPG. Where's the MMO? That's one.
That is a very common complaint that I've leveraged at the game itself. I always call it a RPG first, MMO second. So once you finish the story and the narrative, then the game opens up to be more MMO in terms of its experience. And that nothing feels more MMO than DR and Eureka and Zadnor and like all of the different kind of bigger piece content sets, but those are attractions within the theme park as opposed to the design of the game itself. Now, I would love to see some of those designs brought into the core of what makes Final Fantasy XIV, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
One of the kind of biggest things about it's both. That's what I kind of don't get, how it's so, like, it is, to me it feels miraculous that I finish playing like however many hours of single player content in Shadowbringers, like 30 of just, I am leveling, but I'm not leveling. I'm never leveling. I'm never thinking
You're playing a story in a game.
Yeah, I'm playing through a story, and then at the end of that story I am level 80. I've had an incredible experience. I've had 30 hours of this shit is absolutely incredible.
Okay. So that finishes off video number 2. Obviously, this was a longer one. I might end up, if you guys saw any kind of jump cuts, note that I might have cut over some of the just top parts where they're just kind of talking about WoW and I don't have a context to it. So hopefully that'll make this video a little bit more enjoyable to watch. And then what we'll do is we'll do the third video, since it's a little bit shorter, as its own video as well. I was originally thinking about combining those as one, but these things already get long enough as it is, and so I want to kind of get that to you guys and let you know. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, hit subscribe if you haven't already. You can always check out the other content I have on the channel. Also check out Work to Game and Gaming Kinda. These are great. I'll have the link to this video if you want to watch it without my commentary in the description. And I thank you guys for sending these my way. Hopefully you've enjoyed this reaction. We got one more to do, and so stay tuned for that. Guys, for Ginger Prime, my name is Brian. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you have an amazing day. Hope to see you next time, but until then, take care.